Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Namunadira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunadira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunadira Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotana Shakta Shishimat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Stotana Shakta Shishimat Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय श्री नवदीप धाम की जय श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय Gangamai ki jai, Yamunamai ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Ita Gauda Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So today we're reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 17. Avinashi tu tat vidhi, yena sarvam idam tatam, vinasham avyayasya, na kaschit kartum arhati. Avinashi tu tat vidhi, yena sarvam idam tatam, vinasham avyayasya, na kaschit kartum arhati. Avinashi tu tat vidhi, yena sarvam idam tatam, vinasham avyayasya, na kaschit kartum arhati. Someone can chant?
Avinashi tu tad vidhi,
Avinashi tu tat vidhi,
yena sarvamidam tatam,
yena sarvamidam tatam,
vinasham avyayasya,
vinasham avyayasya,
na kaschit kartum arhati.
na kaschit kartum arhati. Avinashi tu tat vidhi, yena sarvamidam tatam, vinasham avyayasya, na kaschit kartum arhati. Avinashi,
Avinashi,
imperishable.
imperishable,
Two, but,
but
tat,
that
that, vidhi,
vidhi,
know it,
know it,
yena,
yena,
by whom, sarvam, all of the body,
all of the body,
idam, this, tatam, widespread, vinasham, destruction, avyayasya, of the imperishable, asya, of it, nakaschit, no one, kartum, to do, arhati, able. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Know that which pervades the entire body is indestructible. No one is able to destroy the imperishable soul. Purport. This verse more clearly explains the real nature of the soul, which is spread all over the body. Anyone can understand what is spread over the body. It is consciousness. Everyone is conscious of the pains and pleasures of the body in part or as a whole. The spreading of consciousness is limited within one's own body. The pains and pleasures of one body are unknown to another. Therefore, each and every body is the embodiment of an individual soul, and the symptom of the soul's presence is perceived as individual consciousness. This soul is described as 1/10,000th part of the upper portion of the hair, point in size. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad confirms this. Palagra Shatabhagasya Shatada Kalpitasya Jam Bhago Jiva Savigyaha Sachanantyaya Kalpate. When the upper point of a hair is divided into 100 parts, and again, so each of such parts is further divided into 100 parts, Each such part is the measurement of the dimension of the spirit soul. Similarly, in the Bhagavatam, the same version is stated. Keshagra shatabhagasya shatangsha sadishtatmakaha jiva sukshma svarupoyam sankyatito hichitkarnaha. There are innumerable particles of spiritual atoms, which are measured as 1/10,000th of the upper portion of the hair. Therefore, the individual particle of spiritual is a spiritual atom smaller than the material atoms, and such atoms are innumerable. This very small spiritual spark is the basic principle of the material body, and the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. This current of the spirit soul was felt all over the body as consciousness, and that is the proof of the presence of the soul. Any layman can understand that the material body minus consciousness is a dead body, and this consciousness cannot be revived in the body by any means of material administration. Therefore, consciousness is not due to any amount of material combination, but due to the spiritual soul. In the Mundaka Upanishad, the measurement of the atomic spiritual soul is further explained. Esho naratma cetasa veditavyo yasmin pranay panchara visangvivesha Pranaishchitang sarvamutam prajanam yasmin vishuddhe vibhavatesha atma. The soul is atomic in size and can be perceived by perfect intelligence. This atomic soul is floating in the 5 kinds of air, prana, apana, vyana, samana, and udana. Is situated within the heart and spreads its influence all over the body of the embodied living entities. When the soul is purified from the contamination of the 5 kinds of material air, its spiritual influence is exhibited. The Hatha Yoga system is meant for controlling the 5 kinds of air, encircling the pure soul by different kinds of sitting postures, not for any material profit, but for liberation of the minute soul from the entanglement of the material atmosphere. So the constitution of the atomic soul is admitted in all Vedic literatures, and it is also actually felt in the practical experience of any sane man. Only the insane man can think of this atomic soul as all-pervading Vishnu Tattva. The influence of the atomic soul can be spread all over a particular body. According to the Mundaka Upanishad, this atomic soul is situated in the heart of every living entity. And because the measurement of the atomic soul is beyond the power of appreciation of the material scientists, some of them assert foolishly that there is no soul. The individual atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the supersoul, and thus all the energies of the material movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles which carry the oxygen from the lungs gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. Such atomic particles of the spirit whole are compared to the sunshine molecules. In the sunshine, there are innumerable radiant molecules. Similarly, the fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord are atomic sparks of the rays of the Supreme Lord, called by the name Prabha, or superior energy. Neither Vedic knowledge nor modern science denies the existence of the spiritual soul in the body, and the science of the soul is explicitly described in Bhagavad Gita by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Om Akyantimirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam. You're welcome to chant along if you know the verses. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Gurgunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishwaganvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Harami Haripe Vancha Kalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, welcome to Bhagavad Gita class. So Prabhupada gave us not only this Bhagavad Gita as it is, but he also translated almost the entire Srimad Bhagavatam and also Chaitanya Charitamrita. So I wanted to start with the basics of the philosophy. So today's topic is about the spirit soul, the fact that we're not this body, which Prabhupada emphasized in many lectures of his. And we're also going to cover why this is important and how to defend Prabhupada from people who criticize him for emphasizing this. And then we also talk about what is beyond that basic knowledge and the different applications of this knowledge, because we don't only need theory, we need the practical application of our philosophy, both in the personal and interpersonal and in terms of preaching. So I hope it will be interesting for all of you, also those who have been in Krishna consciousness for years, because we also need the application, and especially for preaching, it's also useful to revise the basics every now and then so that you can explain them when preaching, right? This verse, or generally second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is a very good starting point with new people, because these are the basics. Prabhupada says that Bhagavad Gita is like the ABC of spiritual knowledge. So here we're starting with the second chapter. So basically this is the A of the ABC. So we're starting from the very beginning. And this is the basis for everything else that we learn from Srila Prabhupada. And here the main point of this verse is that the spirit soul can't be destroyed. It's also described in Bhagavad Gita of various ways to destroy something, and that doesn't apply to the soul. So it says, for example, the soul can't be burnt, it can't be dried, or it can't be cut apart, like you could do with the material body. But with the spirit soul, that's not possible. It's, as described in this verse, it's even too, it's even too small to even see, like 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. Even the microscopes, the best microscopes that we have, we can't see the soul. And so there's a distinction here made between the body and the soul. And this is very important because Prabhupada defines knowledge as the distinction between matter and spirit. So if we cannot do that on a very obvious thing like the body and the soul, then we cannot do that with more difficult topics. And here, if we further contrast the body and the soul, we find that the body is, of course, material, while the soul is spiritual. The body is temporary. We all know that this body is not going to last forever, no matter what we do. At some point, it's going to perish. And instead, the soul is described as eternal. And obviously here in this verse, it's described as the body being able to be destroyed and the soul not being able to destroy. Elsewhere, it says that the material body is constantly changing, and the soul instead is never changing. The soul is always Satchidananda, eternal, full of happiness and bliss. And the body is also described as full of ignorance and misery, while the soul is always blissful. And Prabhupada often emphasized that this is the very basis of knowledge, of education, and we don't have any schools for that, right? If we go to school here in Germany or even to university, you won't learn about these things there. And everyone, therefore, is taking care of the body only, and nobody does anything to take care of the spirit of the soul that's actually us. And that's compared to cleaning the cage of a bird, making it very nice, but at the same time not feeding the bird, so the bird is actually starving. That's what's happening with us. If we don't do any spiritual activities, then we don't have any nourishment for the soul, actually, for us, for our real identity. And instead we're decorating the body and just doing all our activities to keep the body up that we do. We work, we eat, we sleep, and so on. But we're not chanting, for example, and not taking care of us ourselves, the spirit soul. So in Bhagavad Gita 1864, the soul is described to be like seated on a machine, yantra rudhani mayaya. And so we can imagine, like when we get into a car, we are the passenger and the car is the vehicle. So similarly, the soul is seated inside the body, just like that, just like we can get into a car. And there's another analogy given in Bhagavad Gita 7:4, that the body is like a shirt and coat that we wear. So we have two different layers that the soul is wearing. Basically, the shirt is compared to the subtle body, and the coat to the gross body. This is described as Bhumi Rapona Lova Yehu Kammano Buddhirevacha Ahankara Itiyame Pinna Braketer Ashtada. The earth, water, fire, air, and ether. This is the gross body. And the mind, intelligence, and false ego, that is the subtle body. Altogether, these eight compromise my separated material energies. So we're both having a subtle and a gross material body that covers us, like we wear a shirt and a coat, like in this weather today. And generally, we at least theoretically understand that we're not defined on the basis of the body, like our nationality, religion, or sex, or anything that has to do with our looks. And but we often identify with the mind, right? So the functions of the mind are explained as thinking, feeling, and willing. So this is not only comprises our thoughts, but often we identify with our emotions or our desires. So this is also on the material platform, not just seeing somebody as, German or Indian or something, but we identify. What happened now? We identify with our thoughts, our emotions, or our desires. So this is basically some basics of the philosophy, but we can ask, like, why is this so important? And Prabhupada explains about the difference between matter and spirit. That's the basis of our philosophy. And if we're on the bodily platform and don't understand even this, then how are we going to understand further knowledge that he gives? And like I said, this is the A of the ABC. And he says that somebody who understands this, he's an eligible candidate for Krishna consciousness. So if we contrast that, if we don't understand this, that we're not the body, but the spirit soul, then we cannot be Krishna conscious. So this is quite serious, actually. Like, this is really important to understand. And it's also a prerequisite for higher knowledge and pure devotional service. Prabhupada says that if we don't understand that we're not this body, and like the basic philosophy, then we cannot understand higher knowledge that is given, for example, in the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. So they're discussing about very advanced philosophy. And if we don't understand that we're not this body, we will not understand any higher knowledge either. And he says basically like a mission statement, which I would like to read to you. So the Krishna consciousness movement means that they want to educate people, rectifying the basic principle of misconception. I'm body, I'm American, I'm Indian, I'm fat, I'm thin, I'm black, I'm white. All bodily conception. This has to be removed, first of all. So Shastra says that if one is in the bodily concept of life, then he's no better than an animal. Oh, sorry, I need to find a quote. So I wanted to read this verse to you because Prabhupada quotes this. Yasyatma buddhi kunapetri dhaduke svadi kalatra dishu bhauma ijyatihi. Yatirtha buddhi salilena karyichit janeshu abhideshu sa eva gokaraha. So here it is said that a human being who identifies this body made of three elements with the self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsmen, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to a place of pilgrimage simply to take a bath, rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. So basically, animals, they're not able to study Shastra or think about higher knowledge and philosophy. So if we don't do that in this valuable human body, then we're not better than an animal. And another reason why this is important is because one of the 10 offenses against the holy name is to maintain material attachments, right? So we won't be able to chant offenselessly if we maintain these material attachments to our body, to our mind, etc. And I was also thinking about this saying of Prabhupada that he says, religion without philosophy is sentiment. And we can often see that in modern India, that parents tell their children, oh, you have to do this and that, and they want them to, practice their religion, but they don't actually follow because, young people, they're like, oh, we're modern, we don't follow our tradition necessarily. And then the parents, they cannot explain why. And that's the whole point. You need the philosophy, you need to understand why we're doing all these things. And then you can explain that to others, and that's how you convince them to also practice. So we can defend Prabhupada by all the things that I just mentioned, and also by explaining that he emphasizes this, especially in lectures for new people. Prabhupada was often invited to universities, or he was generally speaking to people who had just become devotees. Even the devotees at that time, they had never heard about Krishna before, like us also. We don't study Bhagavad Gita in school or anything like that here. So Prabhupada was basically teaching beginners. So you wouldn't criticize a teacher who was teaching elementary students to teach the ABC, right? That doesn't really make any sense. Prabhupada was teaching beginners, so of course he wasn't teaching PhD level things. He was teaching the A, B, C at first. But that's not everything he gave. He gave way more than that. But that's an important thing to start with, obviously, because if you can't read, you can't go on to further knowledge. And to summarize, to show this importance, Prabhupada says that the whole process, all of our Krishna conscious process, however, depends on perfect knowledge of the soul beyond the concept of the body. Not theoretically, but practically, when there's no longer chance for sense gratification. Manifested in fruitive activities. One who is not firmly fixed in mind is diverted by various types of fruitive acts. This is from Bhagavad Gita 241 in the purport. So, as we know from Rupa Goswami, who says, Anyavilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena krishnam shilanam bhaktiruttama. Pure devotional service has to be free from karma and jnana, from material desires and monistic philosophy. And here Prabhupada also emphasizes that. If we don't understand this basic philosophy, then we will be prone to sense gratification. And if we don't apply this in our lives, then, the whole process actually doesn't work. He says the whole process is based on perfect knowledge of you're not this body. So if we don't know this, then the whole process of Krishna consciousness won't work. And often, like, who can say that they're free from sense gratification? It's very difficult, actually. But at the same time, when Prabhupada talks about you're not this body, all the devotees go like, oh, yeah, I know this. I've heard this like a million times before. But the test is whether you're actually applying it and whether you're still on the basis of trying to gratify your senses or trying to gratify Krishna's senses. So what's going beyond that is, of course, that everybody has an eternal relationship with Krishna. It's not just you're not this body, you're a spirit soul. That's the basis. But we advance beyond that and understand that Krishna, we have an eternal relationship with Krishna. Jivara Swarupai Krishnara Nityadas. So the living entity is an eternal servant of Krishna in one of the 5 rasas, which is a completely different topic that we're not going to cover today. But it's very important to not stop there, of course. We don't stop at this basic ABC, basically, and don't study further. There's also Swarup Siddhi, like the fact that every living entity has an eternal relationship with Krishna. And Prabhupada even talks about about that in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Like even, introducing Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada already talks about the highest knowledge. So there's no way that he only gave the ABC. He did that, of course, because his students were brand new to Krishna consciousness. And but he also went way beyond that. And if you want to know more about that, you can read, for example, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and Nectar of Devotion. These are books that explain higher knowledge. If you've been around for a few years, then make sure to read these books where Prabhupada talks about more advanced knowledge. So let's talk about personal application. If we usually when we introduce ourselves, what do we mention? We mention where we were born, where we're from. Maybe if that differs from our residence, we say I live here or there. And we might mention our religion, sex, and all these things. This is all on the bodily platform, basically. And one day I met this Mataji, and she had these dreadlocks. And she literally, we were talking about this, and then she literally goes like, meine Haare, das bin ich. My hair, that's me, that's my identity. And I was like, no, you're not. That's not, your hair has nothing to do with your identity. This is, just some external, your looks have nothing to do with the fact that you're a spirit soul. And even in Krishna consciousness, sometimes we use our roles to identify and introduce ourselves. But we have to remember that, in Vaikuntha, there's no temple commander or temple president or whatever. We just all serve Krishna there. It's not, that's not our identity. That's also just we do some service here, we do some service there in the spiritual world. And we shouldn't identify with the fact that we have different roles and we play different roles in Krishna consciousness. And one other way of applying this is that when we're sick, often we think we can't chant. One time I was on a train in India and I met other devotees, and their son was really sick and he had basically lost his voice. He couldn't talk. And so they were like, oh, he can't chant today. And I was like, what? Like, we're supposed to chant at the time of death, right? When the body fully breaks down, doesn't work at all anymore. And like, okay, your voice is not working, but you can still at least go something like that. You can still try, because how are you going to chant at the time of death if you're not chanting when you're sick? Like, if you've seen somebody leave the body, that's way worse than any sickness that you've ever had, right? The whole body just stops functioning. And at that time, that is our goal, to chant at that point in life and to go back to Krishna in the spiritual world, because that's what he says in Bhagavad Gita, that if we remember him at the time of death, then we can go back to Godhead. And so we have plenty of chances to practice that. Every time we're sick, it's like you don't feel like chanting, or it's harder than usual, obviously. But if we don't chant at such times, then how are we going to chant at the time of death? It's just not going to happen if we don't practice before. I mean, I always think of the death as like an exam, and we obviously didn't pass last life because we're here, and so if you want to pass this time, then it's good to prepare, right? It's like some students, somehow they pass an exam. Like my father left the body chanting, even though he was like a Bavarian meat eater 3 times a day, never did anything really much religious or anything like that. And somehow he still left the body chanting. But it's better to prepare for an exam. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. And that's why we chant every day. We chant when we're sick. We chant when we're well, of course, too. But that's the goal to pass this exam after this lifetime, at least. And I was also recently, I heard someone who is in Krishna consciousness say, I don't know, 30 years or something, someone who's been around for a long, long time, say that the soul is sad. I was like, no, Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, the soul is Satchidananda. It's always blissful, right? And this is so interesting that devotees who have been around for such a long time, they don't apply this knowledge in their lives. And that's, as I'm saying, this is so important. I was a little shocked, to be honest. And I don't know, some of you might speak German or maybe not. In German, we have the word soul means Seele, right? And the adjective for that is seelisch. And we use that for the mind, which is completely contrary to our philosophy. When we say, wie geht's dir seelisch? We're talking about like, how's your mental state, right? It's not like, are you chanting nicely or are you not? But in German, if we say seelisch, that's actually, it's how we use it in German, that's how it is. But compared to our philosophy, that word is actually not the right word. It would be mentally, like, how is your mind, right? Are you doing well or are you sad or something like that? So yeah, be careful with that word because it's used completely differently. Also in some, Western philosophy, the word soul generally does not refer to the soul. And further applying this, we usually have our, egoism. I'm from Germany, I'm a woman or whatever. And then we extend our egoism. I, me, and mine, and we're looking for happiness in society, friendship, and love. And it's interesting, though, that in the Bhagavatam, material relationships are described. They're compared to pieces of straw that combine for some time in the river, and then they're separated again. So all our relationships here in the material world, they're temporary. And we don't think about these things. That's where we focus most of our energy. And at the same time, we neglect the needs of the soul. And fortunately, we were part of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement because he says that we can remain in whatever material position we are in. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of job you work, your varna, or what kind of spiritual part, whether you're married or not. Sorry. He says, Stanestita Shutigatam Tanuvan Manomihi. Basically, you can remain wherever you are, whatever material position you're in, it doesn't matter. You simply hear about Krishna. That's the main thing. And Prabhupada says you can keep your position as Brahmana, Kshatriya, whatever you are, and remain in that position, but make sure to hear about Krishna. And I wanted to mention this verse because it's often misused by Krishna West, who use it to claim that you can wear whatever clothes you want, but that verse doesn't even talk about clothes at all. And so we should know the actual meaning of the verses so that we don't fall for something like that when, Shastra is misused, basically. And Prabhupada then says, like, who are we supposed to hear from? Like, we're supposed to hear, right? That's the Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam. That's the start, one of the bases of our practice in devotional service. And Prabhupada then says we should hear from a person who does not speak anything else except Krishna's teachings. I'll read the whole quote for you. It's a bit of a longer quote, but it's very nice to know about who we should hear from and how we should preach also. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is so nice that you don't require to acquire something artificially. No. Wherever you are, remain there. Simply hear. And preaching means to propagate or to vibrate what Krishna said. So this is the position of the preacher, that you simply repeat, like a parrot. No qualification. You simply, whatever is said in the Bhagavad Gita, you repeat. And the others simply hear. Shravanam Kirtanam. Then both of them become liberated. There's no question of that to become a qualified person. This is the only qualification, that a preacher should preach only what Krishna has said. And the audience, they will hear from such a person who does not speak anything else than Krishna's teaching. That's all. So it's very interesting to see that Prabhupada says that we should hear only from those who speak only about Krishna's teachings. Because nowadays we're coming to the preaching part in a minute, but there are people who are very much opposed again to this. And here we have it by Prabhupada himself, who says this in a Bhagavatam lecture, that we should hear only from those who repeat word by word basically what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So regarding the interpersonal application, there's an interesting verse from the Padma Purana that says that somebody who thinks the Vaishnava in the Achyuta Gotra to belong to a certain caste or creed is taken to be a resident of hell. So if we think, say, here we have some Indian Vaishnavas and some German Vaishnavas, that's actually, we should not discriminate on the basis of the body. You know, we might be born in one country or another. It doesn't matter. We're all Krishna's servants, no matter where we're born. And we should not discriminate on that basis. So what should we do instead? It's given in the Nectar of Instruction, Upadeshamrita. The verse number 6 says, one should overlook a devotees having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. And Prabhupada explains in the purport that one should not think, oh, here's an American Goswami, and discriminate against him. And he also says that if we consider the bodily defects of a Vaishnava, we should understand that we're committing an offense at the lotus feet of this Vaishnava. And that's very serious. I mean, there's sin, and then Prabhupada says offenses against Vaishnavas are the worst sin that there is. They're compared to an elephant. It's compared to an elephant who is running around in a nice garden where we have the Bhakti Lata, you know, devotional creeper that's growing. And the elephant, he goes and uproots and destroys the whole garden, basically. So if we make an offense against the Vaishnava, then you know, our devotional service is basically finished, because if you uproot a plant and throw it in the ground, it's not going to grow like that. So this is a very serious offense. And then the question is, what should we do instead? And I remembered, I heard about one Prabhupada disciple who went around greeting everybody with saying, Hari Bol, Spirit Soul. And so that way, that person remembered every time he or she would, I don't remember if it was a Prabhu or Mataji, every time he was greeting somebody, that, oh, this is not, you know, some body, and it's a spirit soul, an eternal servant of Krishna. So I thought that greeting was really, really funny and a nice application of our philosophy to say and remind ourselves constantly, Hari Bol, Spirit Soul. And often we don't do that, and we don't even think about these things. It's actually interesting or shocking, really, that when I grew up here, I was never discriminated against. And I had to join ISKCON to be discriminated against on the bodily platform, which is quite ridiculous, knowing that the basis of our philosophy is you're not this body, you're spirit, soul. And it's really shocking, really, that we're not applying even this the very basics of our philosophy. Because like in Vrindavan, in one of our biggest temples, like Matajis are still not allowed to sing or play instruments in the kirtan. And Prabhupada never did that. He allowed everybody to serve. He had female pujaris, for example, in India. And there's no reason to stop women from doing service, because like that's on the bodily platform. If somebody's qualified, we should see whether that person is qualified actually, and whether they know how to do that service nicely, and then we can select somebody. Or for example, now there's a big discussion about whether women can become Diksha gurus, and the same thing is there. I'm going to read you a quote by Prabhupada, and I don't really understand why there's a discussion at all, because there's nothing much to discuss, because Prabhupada answered that exact question. He was asked, is it possible, Swamiji, for a woman to be a guru in the line of disciplic succession? And he said, yes, Janavi Devi was Nityananda's wife. She became. If she is able to go to the highest perfection of life, why is it not possible to become guru? But not so many. Actually, one who has attained the perfection, she can become guru. But man or woman, unless one has attained perfection, ye guru tattvavita se guru hoy. The qualification of guru is that he must be fully cognizant of the signs of Krishna. Then he or she can become guru. Ye Krishna tattvavita se guru hoy. In our material world, is it any prohibition that woman cannot become professor? If she is qualified, she can become professor. What is wrong there? She must be qualified. That is the position. So similarly, if the woman understands Krishna consciousness perfectly, she can become guru. And now we're having a big discussion and meetings and things like that. And Prabhupada's quote is there. He answered that question clearly. And yeah, some people are still upset, or I don't know, they don't know about this quote maybe, or they don't want to follow it. I don't know. And similarly, there's so many examples of how we're discriminating on the basis of the body. It's interesting, really, that at some festivals, it's announced like, oh, this festival the Russians are going to do the seva, and I was like, okay, so I'm not Russian. Why I'm not allowed to do seva in the temple? There's simply no philosophical basis on for our decisions. Sometimes it's like a practical thing. Okay, we tell one person, okay, you organize, and that's the leader of the Russian group, for example, and then they do the seva, but that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to cooperate, and everybody is welcome to do seva and help do something for Krishna, and based on their abilities, of course. And one other example that I wanted to mention is that as Western, okay, we're not supposed to say Western devotees, but for the sake of clarity and simplicity, we're not allowed to take darshan in Jagannath Puri, in the temple of Jagannath. So that also is basically like an offense against all those Vaishnavas. And Prabhupada, he refused to establish a temple in Jagannath Puri, because he said, I will not go there because my disciples are not welcome there. And then, even though he was a big fan of Jagannath, he had the Ratha Yatra in his childhood that he organized in the neighborhood. And he was always looking at the timetable for Vrindavan and Puri on what time is the train leaving. I want to go. And still, he did not establish a temple there, because even now, 50 years later, the situation hasn't changed. We're still not allowed to go and take darshan there. Just discrimination based on the body, which is really sad. And one other example I wanted to mention was I was talking to one Mataji, and she told me like she was talking about one Mataji, and she said, I thought she was advanced, but then I found out that she was on antidepressants. And I was like, yeah, so what? She's sick. That doesn't have to do anything with her Krishna consciousness. Like if somebody broke his leg, we wouldn't be like, oh, he broke his leg, he's not very Krishna conscious, for we would never make that correlation. And the mind is just part of the subtle material body, like I quoted that verse from Bhagavad Gita earlier. And on that platform, suddenly we're saying, oh, her mind is sick, she can't be Krishna conscious. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But for her, that was the immediate conclusion. And one thing I wanted to mention that I thought I was really surprised when I read that is that Prabhupada allowed different temples in one city, and each temple was for a different ethnic group. Like, for example, one Indian temple and one Western temple, like that. And he said, yeah, that's okay, because birds of a feather flock together. And I thought, we're obviously supposed to cooperate in Krishna consciousness. And so I was really surprised to find that quote. But that's what he said. And in some countries, like, for example, I've heard about South Africa, there are more tensions. I mean, because of history, there's more tension between different groups there. So there, it might make sense actually to have, a temple for white people, a temple for black people, a temple for Indians, because they're not getting along so well in the temple. And so I thought that was really interesting that Prabhupada allowed that, because he was just being practical and was like, okay, well, that's how people are. They're from a similar background, so they like to associate and work together. And the last topic that I wanted to mention was the application of this philosophy for preaching. And so basically talking about things that are related to the body or the mind, that's not Krishna conscious preaching. Like, we talk about the philosophy and the spiritual side of the philosophy, of course. But if we talk about the material things, that cannot be considered preaching. And I remember that verse I read, that quote by Prabhupada I read, that we're supposed to repeat like a parrot, right? So if we talk about, for example, just material relationships, like some people like to do, every time I see something in Russian on my Facebook, I translate it, and 99% of the time that quote is about relationships and how to improve your relationship with your spouse or things like that. And I mean, that's important. If your spouse is a Vaishnava, of course you want to serve that person, but to like reduce our preaching to talking about that only, that's not in Prabhupada's, that's not according to Prabhupada's instructions. And often we also see people talking about the mind and how to control the mind. And Prabhupada says that basically, if you're Krishna conscious, your mind will automatically be controlled because you're thinking of Krishna. And if you do that all the time, then your mind has nothing else to think about and is automatically controlled. And these are things that are somehow, they go viral on social media and things like that. And devotees like to talk about these things. But we're supposed, like I said before, we're supposed to repeat what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita like a parrot. And so if we preach like that, that's not what Prabhupada told us to do. And similarly, in India, there's lots of value preaching going on. They go to the schools, and instead of teaching them Bhagavad Gita, they're talking about values like you're supposed to forgive or be grateful and things like that. And it's interesting that when I searched for quotes by Prabhupada, when he talks about gratitude, he always talks about gratitude to Krishna. what are we grateful to Krishna for that he gave us, and he gave us everything, so we have a lot to be grateful for. But when I see quotes on gratitude, often it's like, oh, I'm grateful for whatever, passing my exam or things like that, and we kind of lose that connection to Krishna if we preach like that. And one other thing that I noticed is that nowadays people like to tell stories a lot, which is mentioned in Shastra. Is Mahabharata was written for women in Shudras because they like stories, and nobody likes philosophy. Of course, that's when people they go to sleep, and but Prabhupada said that storytelling should be used as an example to illustrate the philosophy. So we talk philosophy, and then we can tell a story to illustrate that. And I have a folder on my computer with clips by Prabhupada where he tells stories. And I can tell you they're all like 3, 4, 5 minutes long. It's interesting. Prabhupada did not, elaborately tell stories. And even those who sometimes do nowadays, like His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he's famous for telling stories and telling the stories of the Bhagavatam, but he always speaks philosophy first, and then he goes on to tell the stories, and we just don't remember that part. And similarly in Krishna book, Prabhupada, that's just stories basically from the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, but when Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book, he included all the philosophy that you're supposed to read the Bhagavatam starting from the beginning. So by the time you get to the 10th canto, you already know the philosophy, right? So Prabhupada wrote a single volume Krishna book that's a summary of the 10th canto, the stories of Krishna in Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka. And he put all the philosophy in that's missing in the 10th canto, because you're already supposed to know that, because you should have read the 9 cantos before that. And it was interesting. I just wanted to give an example. I heard a verse from the Bible quoted recently twice, and it goes like this: "For what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and suffers the loss of his soul?" And I was like, you cannot lose your soul. That's wrong philosophy. You are the soul. You can lose your body. That's called death. But you cannot lose your soul. And I heard people quoting that verse, and I was like, this is not according to our philosophy. We shouldn't be quoting stuff that is actually opposite to our philosophy, and because you can't lose the soul. The soul is eternal, and you are the soul. There's no way you can lose it in that sense. And I wanted to finish with one very nice quote by Srila Prabhupada on how we should preach, and in terms of you're not this body. And he says, we are not preaching to Christian or Hindu or Muslim. We're preaching to a human being. We do not see, here's a Christian, here's a Muslim, here's a Hindu, here's a white man, here's a black man. No. Every living being, his duty is to understand God. This is our preaching. So we often have that tendency to see like, oh, okay, he's from India, she's from Germany, and to separate and judge and discriminate like that. But Prabhupada, he says, we do not even see like that. We just preach to everybody, because every living being is an eternal servant of Krishna. And we preach to them because they've lost their relationship with Krishna, and Krishna wants them back in the spiritual world. And that's the goal of life, to go back there. And that's how we can help them, by giving them books or Harinam and like that. So are there any questions? There should be. Every time this happens in Prabhupada's classes, he quotes that verse from Bhagavad Gita, Tat vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, that you're supposed to ask questions. That's a very important part of understanding the philosophy, to clarify any questions you have. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Mataji.
You're welcome.
I just had something I want to clarify on. This example you gave about how we should always include the message of the story that we're saying and quote scriptures, and also about how the people that go out preaching, they are they're talking about the values of life, but not in connection to always direct connection to the Bhagavad Gita or any of the other books that we have. Is it possible that some of them are doing it because they are appealing to the wider audience, who are maybe not quite ready to be able to read the books? I'm thinking of like all of these preachers who are traveling around the world writing books and then giving just basic values in life, but without directly referring to the books.
Shishi Gornitai ki jai. Okay, so one misconception in your question I wanted to correct first. We do not include the moral of the story. Prabhupada says we should give the philosophy and illustrate the philosophy with an example, and that can be the story. So it's not that we tell stories and then include in the moral or like that's an afterthought. We talk philosophy like Prabhupada gave it, and then if you remember a story from Shastra, you can include that as to illustrate. And regarding your question, we do not try to, Prabhupada says in regarding Kirtan, he was asked, how can we actually motivate the public to join in the Kirtan, which is a valid question. And he says, we do not try to satisfy the crowd. We give them Krishna, we give them philosophy also, we give them what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, because Krishna knows best, right? It's his philosophy, is he's preaching. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given the example of how we preach with Mridanga and Kartals. We do Kirtan and preach Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam philosophy. There is simply no need to adapt anything. Prabhupada already adapted everything for the Western countries in modern times. And we should just follow his example and follow in his footsteps. There's no need to invent anything new. And like he said, we're supposed to repeat like a parrot. There's really nothing that extra that we have to invent or follow. That's not the system of a parampara. Parampara works by repeating, transmitting the knowledge as you have received from your guru. And Prabhupada says in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita that we should not add anything. We should not leave anything out. And there shouldn't be any whimsical participation from our side. So we have no authorization to change anything or improve. I guess those people want to improve their presentation of Krishna consciousness, but Prabhupada doesn't say that anywhere. And when he was asked similar questions like that, he was very clear that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is how he preaches. He knows what he's doing. And that's how we also preach. That's how we introduce Krishna and Krishna consciousness. And we just have to have some faith like that. I heard one story. They were distributing Krishna book. And they were just like, here, this is Krishna. He's blue and he plays the flute. That's what they said to people. And they had, book distribution scores that we cannot even dream about nowadays. You don't have to water anything down. Actually, Krishna is the all attractive, right? If we talk about Krishna, he will attract people. And we don't go for people who are not ready for it. We want to find those people who are interested, who are looking, who are inquisitive, who are searching for something beyond, eating, making, sleeping, and defending. And all those who are not interested in that, we give them some prasad. Maybe they'll take that. They'll hear the Harinam. They get some benefit from that. And philosophy is actually not for the masses. That's what Prabhupada said also. For the masses, we chant Hare Krishna. And that everybody can benefit from. And those who have inquisitive minds, they need to study. If your mind always goes like, why is that? Why is that? You have a million questions, then that means you need to study. If you were like a little kid that needs to, take apart the cars or whatever and see how they work, those people, they need to study. Yeah. All right. You had a question, Prabhu?
Yeah, I have actually, how, what would be your hint, your advice not to feel like a mind or a body during the common things like, like work or like washing dishes, because automatically you think, I'm doing this, and I'm the body, so you have the identification immediately.
Okay.
I'm talking from my end,
Okay.
So.
Yeah, so how can you remember that you're not this body while working or doing the dishes? Well, doing the dishes is also service. If you're at home and you cook for Krishna, there will be dishes to clean. So whatever you eat, we should offer to Krishna, because in Bhagavad Gita it is said that if you eat things that you've cooked for yourself, for your own sense gratifications, you're eating only sin. So basically, if you're cooking for Krishna, washing the dishes for Krishna, eating for Krishna, accepting prasad, then you can also remember that this is seva, this is a service that I'm doing for Krishna. And this is also when you're working, what are you working for? What do you pay for with the money that you get from your work? You're paying for your apartment, I suppose. So that is actually Krishna's temple. If you have an altar at home, then you're working to maintain Krishna's place. That's not your place, that's Krishna's home. And so that's like a temple. Everybody should have a temple. I mean, all our houses should be, they're actually Krishna's houses. And so if you remember that, like, why am I doing this? You can spiritualize everything you do. You're cleaning the floor, that's, seva. Whether you're cleaning it here or in your house, that doesn't make a difference. Krishna is Krishna. He's here and he's in your house too. Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
As Prabhupada often states, and also it's given in Brahma Samhita, Krishna is always stated as Satchidananda. Sat means full of bliss. But
Ananda.
Ananda, yes, full of bliss. But we also see that Prabhupada oftentimes mentions that seeing us here, who are children of Krishna in the material world suffering, Krishna feels sad. So how to understand this, that if he is full of bliss, how can he be sad or not happy?
Oh, okay. Well, he is Satchidananda and always blissful, but still it's like a father who sees his children suffering. So even if he himself is happy, he will see his children. Krishna sees us suffering in the material world. So if the father is seeing his children suffering, then he still feels compassion toward them. He's still merciful to us. Yeah.
So our ultimate goal is to have Ananda Smriti and go back to Krishna Loka, and us and Krishna both are qualitatively same, Satchidananda, the soul and the super soul. Then would we also be feeling not happy or come in that sense when we go back home, back to Godhead?
Well, we can do that while we're here, actually. While when we go outside and see people suffering here in the material world, we can be happy from, having a nice kirtan class and arti and nice prasad. And after the program, we're happy and spiritually uplifted. But then we go out and on the S-Bahn, everybody's like, I always, when I'm coming back from India, it's such a shock every time you enter that first train from the airport. Because in India, generally people, they have some sort of relationship with God, let's say. They're mostly pious, and you can tell from their faces, even like simple villagers or poor people that you see in the streets, they're satisfied with what they have. And then you come here to this, materialistic, luxurious lifestyle that we have here, and everybody's like, so we can go and, we can feel compassionate to these people. They don't have Prabhupada's books. They don't go home and chant, Hare Krishna. They've never even heard about the mantra. I remember when I first heard the Hare Krishna mantra in the streets, I was like, oh, this is some nice music. I didn't even know that was a mantra. I didn't even make the connection, oh, they're singing something spiritual or anything like that. I was just like, oh, nice music. I want to stay here. But yeah, so at this you can feel both happy, blissful yourself, but a devotee doesn't. He's so compassionate that he doesn't feel completely happy when he sees others suffering, and that's why we go out and preach. That's why we distribute books. That's why we go out on Harinam and chant for people who've never even heard about Krishna. So that's possible both at the same time for us and for Krishna.
My understanding, us being in such a nice environment can be full of bliss while feeling sad for others and compassion the same way Krishna feels. Is that correct?
Yeah. All right. Anything else? All right. I have something else I wanted to show you. I'll find it. Anyway, I got a flyer that there's a temple, a South Indian temple opening near Stuttgart, and there's a Sri Venkatesh temple. So I'm gonna look for the flyer, and if you want to donate something, you can let me know. There's a QR code, and because it's stated in Shastra that to donate for opening a temple gives very much spiritual benefit. And it doesn't happen every day that in Germany a new temple opens. Unfortunately, we would also like to have, to build our own temple here in Munich. That would be nice. But let's see when Krishna fulfills that desire. But we can also help others and help with their temple that's opening in Stuttgart, near Stuttgart. And one more thing I wanted to mention is I have some tulsi sticks that I brought today. Like we said earlier, we should offer everything that we eat at home, not just come here and take prasad in the temple, but everything we cook at home, anything pure vegetarian without onion and garlic, we can offer to Krishna. And you're supposed to usually place a tulsi leaf, like Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yo Me Bhakti Pradachati, that he accepts everything, a fruit, a flower, some water, and a leaf, it says. And Prabhupada explains that this leaf actually refers to tulsi, and on every offering that we make for Krishna, we should place a tulsi leaf. So many of us here in this climate, it's possible, but it's not so easy to grow tulsi at home. You can see her behind. It's possible, and we should do that if we can. But there's a verse that says if we don't have tulsi leaves, we can touch the preparation with a stick made from tulsi wood. So if anybody needs one, let me know. I brought some today, so that even if you don't have tulsi as of now, you can offer proper prasadam. It's like an emergency solution. It's better, obviously, to use the leaves and do the offering properly. But there's a concession for those of us who don't have tulsi at home. All right. Yes.
Can you explain us why onion and garlic is not used for Christmas?
Okay. Yeah, so onion and garlic are not used because they're in the mode of ignorance, tamaguna. And we don't offer anything that's in tamaguna or rajaguna. Everything we offer should be in the mode of goodness, sattvaguna. And we offer everything as Krishna likes. Imagine you have a friend coming over and you know that person doesn't like something. You're not going to use that in your cooking, right? So we know that Krishna doesn't eat these things. So he doesn't eat non-vegetarian food either. So then we cook for him according to his taste. And he explains that. Yeah. Yes, Mataji.
Could you offer food to Krishna, for instance, if you have nothing else, like a tulsi or the stick, which we're taking maybe later?
Mm-hmm.
Could you offer a basil leaf, or is it not good enough? Not
basil can be offered. It's not something that cannot be offered, but it's not the leaf that Prabhupada is talking about. You can use the tulsi leaf or the stick. And you can, if you have basil, you can use that, make pesto or something.
Yeah.
That's possible. But that Prabhupada explains, and you can look up that verse in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says you eat verily only sin if you eat non-offered food. And you'll see that Prabhupada explains that this leaf refers to tulsi leaf. There are other types of leaves. We eat spinach and other types of leaf too, of course. But he says that one leaf that we really need for every single preparation, that's tulsi. Hare Krishna. Yes.
Would Krishna also accept the offering if before offering we request Tulsi Maharani to have her presence in the bhoga so that Krishna could honor it and then offer it to Krishna, or Krishna would not accept it?
That's not what that verse says. There's that verse that says you have to offer every preparation with a tulsi leaf. And then there's 2 or 3 more options that I don't remember right now. And the last option that Krishna gives is touching with a tulsi stick. So we shouldn't speculate and think like, it's not that difficult to have the stick at home and just, touch it, right? It's pretty easy to do that. So we shouldn't, everybody's able to do that. So there's no need to think of other solutions than those given in Shastra. And we shouldn't speculate and invent our own process apart from what's given in Shastra.
So that is not done, then Krishna would not accept.
Let's say if you don't have anything, but I'm going to give you the stick, so you will be good. It's up to Krishna to accept or not accept. And here in that verse, twice he mentions the word bhakti. So the most important ingredient is actually your love and devotion. So he'll accept anything offered with devotion. He also doesn't say you have to chant this mantra, that mantra, you have to be clean, you have to be a million things, which is also important. But he says he wants the bhakti. Krishna doesn't need our offerings. He's God. He has everything that he needs. He wants our love and devotion. That's what he really wants. And yeah, he could accept. He can do anything he wants. Why not? But we should make sure that we follow Shastra and try to do our best. And if our best is, I said this is an emergency solution, then it's okay. We tried our best to serve Krishna with love and devotion, and he'll do the rest. Yeah.
Maybe we are slightly deflecting from the topic, but what about the dairy products from the dairy industry, because it is connected to meat industry?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay to consume or offer milk from the cow?
Okay. So what about industrial dairy products? There's 2 things to say, really. One is that Prabhupada did use those, so we can offer them. But at the same time, he was also giving instructions to his disciples to have farms. So we should have our own cows that are not slaughtered, that don't have anything to do with the modern dairy industry. And he makes a very clear distinctions that our projects, they're supposed to be cow protection. It's not dairy industry. And we let the cows live as long as they live. And then we let them leave their bodies in a natural way. So that is, the actual solution. And then we don't have that problem anymore. If we have our own cows, then that would be the actual solution. And Prabhupada wanted to have farms outside the cities so that they could produce ghee and paneer and all these things there, and supply the city temples. Yeah.
What exactly to use?
It's okay if you don't have anything else. Then, yeah. Yes.
If the ahimsa cow products are not available in our situation, then should we avoid offering dairy products, or knowing that Krishna being Govinda, he would feel not very happy from the products which are coming from bringing such a harm to cow? Should we avoid offering dairy products, or should we still offer?
Prabhupada didn't avoid offering any dairy products. He was traveling. He didn't have, he didn't live on the farm, right? So he was in that same situation where he couldn't get ahimsa products on a daily basis. And yeah, he still ate a normal diet, including dairy products.
You recently mentioned that if we call a friend at home, then we see what they would like and we prepare accordingly. So would Krishna be happy if the milk products are offered which are coming from bringing so much harm to cows?
Our situation in the material world is not ideal. Of course, we try to follow these instructions, and we try to not harm the cows, but yeah, this is the material world. We do our best and we follow as Prabhupada's did it and instructed us to do.
Krishna would sadly accept the offering, which are offered from new products coming from himself.
I mean, he accepts, and those cows actually also make spiritual progress. Like everything that's offered to Krishna. I remember one quote where Prabhupada says that every flower that is offered, that tree or that plant where that flower came from, is making spiritual progress. So similarly, the cows also make spiritual progress by having their milk offered to Krishna. This should not be an excuse, of course, I mean, we've been slacking for 50 years, to be honest, in our, establishment of Krishna conscious farms. And we're not on any level that I think would be pleasing to Prabhupada after 50 years. But we cannot, change the offering completely. And just because we're following some modern fad like veganism, that's not mentioned anywhere in Shastra. That has no basis at all. Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
I think it was Garuda Purana. It is mentioned about milk. That the cows are mistreated, and the milk becomes poison for the humans.
They will be
Milk become
Poison.
poisonous.
poisons. It become because probably, I don't know. It doesn't explain in details what's the process, but this milk become not good
Okay.
or favorable for humans.
Yeah.
If the cows are mistreated, probably I don't know. But no explanation totally. This is mentioned very well.
Yeah, that might be mentioned. We still follow Prabhupada and his example. And of course, we don't, in Kali Yuga especially, we don't have perfect ingredients with anything. Nothing is actually fresh in the supermarket, It's like you're supposed to only collect and cook within 3 hours of the offering, right? So that's not even possible to harvest and offer within 3 hours like you're supposed to, but we do our best. And yeah, we don't have nice offerings in Kali Yuga generally. Like the deities in the temple, they're supposed to be worshipped with gold and jewels. And some temples still do that, but most temples, it's just not possible. And Prabhupada says it will attract thieves if we do that. So we do our best and offer whatever we have with love and devotion, and then Krishna will accept. Yeah, but yeah, interesting point. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.